Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Kent District Library's streaming program. My name is Ty. I'm from the Wyoming and Colorado branches, and I'm happy you're all here today. We have an exciting program for you today called Michigan Animal Homes with Miss Megan from John Ball Zoo. But first, I'd like to tell you about another program we have that may be of interest to you. All right, so be sure to tune in for our Curiosity Lab if that's something that's up your alley. So we have many programs happening, and most of them in the fall are recorded and saved for you to view later. So if you're interested in watching this program again after you're done, or seeing what other programs we've had here this fall, feel free to check out our KDL Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our program presenter today. This is Miss Megan, John Ball Zoo. Good morning, Miss Megan.
Good morning.
Good morning. Are you all set for us?
I'm ready for you.
All right, so let's get going. We're going to talk about Michigan Animal Homes today, right?
Sounds great.
All right, we'll touch base at the end.
Okay. All right, everyone, today we are talking about Michigan Animal Homes. I've got a couple animals that we are going to meet today. My name is Miss Megan. I'm here at John Ball Zoo. I would love it if you come and visit us before we close for the season. And what's really fun is this weekend is Zoo Goes Boo. So we've got a candy trail so you can come with your costumes and it's really fun. But let's talk about animal homes. So I'm going to share my screen with you. All right. So an animal home is called a habitat, and there are many different kinds of habitats in the wild. And today we are going to meet some Michigan wildlife that I have here with me in the classroom. I have 4 animal and human needs that we're going to talk about and figure out. And then lastly, we're going to take a look at some zoo habitats and then what those habitats look like in the wild as well. So let's start by figuring out what you already know. I'm going to show you some animals, and if you think that this animal lives in Michigan, I want you to give me a big thumbs up. If you think this animal does not live in Michigan, give me a thumbs down. And if you're not sure, you can always do the in-between thumb just like this. So here we go. First animal. Do you think bald eagles live here in Michigan? Yes, no, or maybe? What do you think? The answer is yes, bald eagles do live here in Michigan. What about the American alligator? Does this animal live in Michigan? Yes, no, or maybe? The answer is no. The American alligator does not live here in Michigan. It is an animal that lives in the United States, but it usually lives where it's warm all year round, and they could not really survive here in the wintertime. Next animal is the hippopotamus. Do you think the hippopotamus lives here in Michigan? Have you ever seen a hippopotamus in Michigan before? The answer is no. The hippopotamus does not live here in Michigan. They live in Africa. And in fact, many scientists say that the hippopotamus is one of the most dangerous animals in all of Africa, which is pretty impressive. What about the rainbow trout? Yes, no, or maybe? Is this an animal that lives here in Michigan? Yes, it absolutely is. We've got lots of different species of fish that live here in Michigan and some awesome fish habitat too. What about the red macaw? Is this an animal that lives in Michigan? Yes, no, or maybe? We've got a lot of birds that live here, but the red macaw is not one of them. The red macaw lives in South and Central America. The habitat that we have here in Michigan is not correct for the red macaw. And then the last one, the river otter. Is this an animal that lives in Michigan? Yes, no, or maybe? What do you think? The answer is yes. The river otter is an animal that lives right here in Michigan, and we have some awesome river otter habitat here for them. Now that we've learned a little bit about what animals live here and what animals don't, we're going to move on to round 2 to see if you know which habitats or animal homes we have here in Michigan. What about forests? Do we have any forests here in our state? Yes, no, or maybe. What do you think? The answer is yes. In fact, I bet if some of you look out your window right now, you might see some forest out of your window, and you've probably all been in a forest before. It's a place with lots and lots of trees and some understory as well. What about deserts? Do we have deserts here in Michigan? A desert is a place where it does not rain or snow hardly at all year long. And here in Michigan, we get lots of rain and snow. So the answer is no, we do not have deserts here. But what's interesting about deserts is that a lot of times they're very hot, but sometimes they can be very cold. Did you know that the largest desert in the entire world is Antarctica? It's really, really cold there, but because it does not rain or snow hardly at all, it is considered a desert. What about dunes? Do we have dunes here in Michigan? Answer is yes, we do have dunes here in Michigan. And I bet if you have been to the beach before, you've probably climbed up some dunes or at least seen some dunes. There are these tall mounds of sand. What about wetlands? Do we have wetlands here? Wetlands are areas that are saturated with water. They've got lots of water. And the answer is yes. Wetlands are very important Michigan habitat that can take care of lots and lots of different kinds of animals that we have here. Last one, what about rainforests? Do we have rainforests here in Michigan? We said we had forests, but we do not have rainforests. Rainforests are very, very warm and rainy, and they're often tropical too. So we do not have rainforests here in Michigan. Awesome job. Now that we've looked at a few different Michigan habitats, habitats are places where animals live. And there are certain things that all animals and humans like you need in their habitat in order to survive. Can you think of any? If you have someone with you, you can turn to them and tell you some ideas that you have. Or you can also motion different things that animals need. And then I'll tell you. The first thing that an animal needs is food. All animals and humans too need food. So to remember that, we're going to do a motion for food, kind of like you're munching on something. All animals and humans need food. The next one is water. All humans and all animals need water, even the animals that live in a desert. So to remember that all animals and humans need water, we're going to do twinkle fingers just like this. Great job. And then the next one is shelter. All animals and all humans need shelter. So this is kind of like the place where you can go to get out of bad weather. Animals use shelter to stay away from predators that might want to eat them. And then the last one, and we don't always think of this one, but this is very important. All animals and humans need space. So for space, you can put your arms out like this and swing your arms around. You need space to be able to survive. If you lived in your house with 100 other people, that would be pretty cramped. So you need some space to be happy and healthy, and animals do too. So now that we've learned a little bit about habitats, I am going to show you our very first Michigan animal. Let's see. All right, my first Michigan animal, got him right behind me. He's been hanging out with us the whole time. This is Chewy, the American toad. And Chewy is a really amazing animal. He is a Michigan animal because he lives here in the Mitten State. And he's really cool. He lives usually in forests and in wetlands. Remember, we talked about wetlands and how they're important habitat for many different animals. And because he needs food in his habitat like all other animals. He loves to eat insects, lots and lots of bugs. So he opens his mouth really wide and chomps on those bugs. And something else that's really cool about him is the way that he drinks water. Remember, we said all animals need water to survive. So what he'll do is he will sit in some water, maybe in a puddle or sometimes even just some wet soil. And when he's sitting in there, he can soak up the water into his skin, and that's how he drinks his water. Now, he needs shelter, and especially in the wintertime, because it's very, very cold, and he cannot survive the cold very well. So he has something that he likes to do. What he'll do is he'll dig his way underground, and he goes to sleep all winter long. So he's in his little shelter underground, and he's sleeping all winter until it's time to wake up in the spring. Does anybody know what that's called? If you said hibernation, you are correct. So he hibernates in the wintertime to be able to survive. Now, Chewy is a really special zoo animal because he came to us from the wild. So he has a pretty crazy story. Most of the animals we have in the zoo came from other zoos, or sometimes were even born in our zoo. But Chewy lived in the forest next to the zoo. So we don't really know how old he was. But one day, Chewy decided to hop down into the zoo, and he went into the chimpanzee habitat. That's not a very good place for a toad to be, because one of the chimpanzees found Chewy and stuck him in her mouth. So Chewy was inside a chimpanzee's mouth, but luckily for Chewy, he has something that keeps animals from wanting to eat him, and that is his skin, which tastes terrible. Chewy tastes really, really bad to other animals. So can you imagine what face that chimpanzee made when she tasted Chewy? Blah, pretty gross. So she spit him out right away, and then he had to spend some time up in our vet's hospital. And now he comes to classrooms and meets lots and lots of students and people at libraries too. All right, I'm going to put Chewy back. So if you'd like, you can say, bye, Chewy. All right, good job, Chewy. All right. So now that we've met one of our Michigan animals, we're going to see what the habitats in the zoo look like and see if you can match the animal to the habitat. So when we build habitats in the zoo, we design them for whatever the animal needs. And because different animals need a few different things in their habitat, they look really different from one another. So this first habitat that we're looking at is steep and rocky. If you think that the mountain lions need a zoo habitat that's steep and rocky, I'm going to have you show me your mountain lion claws. And if you think that a bald eagle needs a steep and rocky habitat, I'm going to have you hold your bald eagles out, hold your bald eagle wings out and soar around like a bald eagle, just like this. So who do you think needs this zoo habitat? If you did mountain lion claws, you are correct. The mountain lion uses a habitat that is steep and rocky. This is an animal that lives here in Michigan. So let's take a look and see what their wild habitat looks like. So as you can see, in their wild habitat, they have trees. It looks pretty cold out in this habitat to me. It's probably nighttime. The mountain lion is a nocturnal animal, and they like to move around at night. So I'm seeing some rocks. I'm seeing sticks on the ground. This looks like a forest habitat to me. And what's really cool about the mountain lion is that they can live in many different types of habitats. So they can live in a forest. Like their name says, they can live in mountains, and they can even live in canyons and cities sometimes too. So the mountain lion habitat that we have here in Michigan is forests. What about this one? So this zoo habitat has logs, trees, and large rocks. If you think this is a perfect zoo habitat for the Canada lynx, I'm going to have you put your Canada lynx ears up just like this. And if you think that this is the perfect zoo habitat for the rainbow trout, I'm going to have you make a fishy face just like that. So who do you think this zoo habitat is for? If you said the Canada lynx, you are correct. The Canada lynx needs a habitat with logs and trees and large rocks to jump on and to hide underneath. This is Nori, our Canada lynx. And if you've been following us on Facebook or Instagram, you might have seen that Nori had a baby earlier this year. Her name is Yoshi, and she's so cute. So check that out if you haven't seen it yet. But let's take a look and see what the Canada lynx habitat looks like in the wild. Ooh, it's really, really snowy. The Canada lynx is really good at surviving in the winter time and especially in the forest. In the forest, they're going to hunt for things like rabbits and hares, and they're very good hunters. And part of what makes them really good at surviving in the snow and hunting in the snow is that they have ginormous paws. Take a look at Nori's paws in this picture. They're really, really big, and they act kind of like snowshoes on the snow so that when they're walking in the snow, they're quiet and their feet stay on top. So they're very good at moving around in the wintertime. What about this zoo habitat? This zoo habitat has perches and branches. If you think the river otter needs a zoo habitat with perches and branches, I'm going to have you put up your little river otter paws just like this. And if you think that a barn owl needs a zoo habitat with perches and branches, I'm going to have you flap your wings just like a barn owl. Who do you think this zoo habitat belongs to? If you were flapping your wings like a barn owl, you are correct. This is Alba and Tito. They live here at John Ball Zoo, and they love having lots of perches to land on and branches to land on too. Barn owls are really cool because they are great at flying through small spaces. Just like if they were living outside, they might find a barn to go live in so they can fly through a window pretty easily, which is awesome to see. But let's take a look and see what their wild habitat looks like. So as you can see, this barn owl is out in a forest, and the forest has plenty of places for them to perch on branches, in trees. They've got awesome shelter because they love to live in the holes in trees. We call them tree cavities. So that's a perfect place for them to have a nest and a shelter. And there's lots and lots of food for a barn owl in a forest. They love to eat rodents like mice and rats. Sometimes they'll even eat things like frogs and toads and snakes. And all of those things can be found in a forest. So there's plenty of food and shelter for a barn owl in a forest. All right, what about this one? This zoo habitat has water, perches, a nest, and the whole thing is enclosed with a net roof. So who do you think this one is for? Is it for the rainbow trout? If you think it's the rainbow trout, let me see your fishy face. And if you think if it's for the bald eagle, I want you to put your wings out and soar around like a bald eagle. Who do you think this zoo habitat is for with water, perches, a nest, and the whole thing enclosed with a net roof? You said the bald eagle. You are correct. The bald eagle has lots of space to fly around in their habitat here at John Ball. They've got water. They've got plenty of food and space. But let's take a look and see what their wild habitat looks like. Ooh, this one's really cool. That bald eagle built a nest high up in a tree right next to the water, which is an awesome spot for a bald eagle because they hunt for food like mice and rats and sometimes things like rabbits, but they also can hunt for fish. So this is a perfect spot for that bald eagle to be able to hunt for lots of food. They build their nest high up in a tree, and bald eagles are famous for building really, really big nests, which is their shelter. And the largest bald eagle nest that people ever found got to be so big and heavy that it actually knocked over the tree that they were building it in. So that's a perfect habitat for the bald eagle, is high up in that tree where they can see the food all around them, right next to the water. All right, whose zoo habitat is this? This one has flowing water, rocks, and different levels. If you think that this is the perfect zoo habitat for the rainbow trout, I'm going to have you show me your rainbow trout face. And if you think that this is the perfect zoo habitat for the Canada lynx, I'm going to have you put up your Canada lynx ears just like this. Who do you think this zoo habitat is for? You said that it was for the rainbow trout. You are correct. The rainbow trout is an animal that we have here at the zoo, but let's take a look and see what their wild habitat looks like. So right here, we actually have, this is really cool. This is a baby rainbow trout. And what I'm seeing in their habitat is a lot of rocks. Rocks are very helpful for the rainbow trout when they are just babies, because if they're living in a really strong river with a strong current, they don't want to get washed away. So the eggs can go down into the rocks, and that's a safe place for them. That's an awesome shelter where they're not going to get washed away by the river. All right. What about this one? Whose zoo habitat is this? This one has deep water, shallow rock steps, logs, and rocks. If you think that this is a habitat for a river otter, let me see your little river otter paws. And if you think that this is the zoo habitat for the Canada lynx, let me see your Canada lynx ears. Who do you think this zoo habitat is for? You said the river otter. You are correct. The river otter is an excellent swimmer. This is a picture of Slide. He is our male river otter, and he has a crab. River otters love to eat things like fish and crabs and clams, lots of meat, especially animals that they can find in the water. So the river is a perfect habitat for them. And that's a great way to have a zoo habitat too, is to have places where they can swim because they're such awesome swimmers. But let's take a look and see what their wild habitat looks like. As you can see, it's pretty similar to their zoo habitat, which is exactly what we want when we're building our zoo habitats. They've got lots of places to swim. They love living in the river, just like their name says. And the river is a great place for them to find lots of water, of course. And there's lots of food in the river, like fish and crabs and crayfish and oysters and clams. So there's lots of food there. And then they can find shelter on the shore. And they also love to live in groups together too, so they can help to keep each other safe. All right, you have done a super awesome job in that game. And I have one last animal to show you before we're done for today. Let's see. All right, I've got one last Michigan animal to show you. He's been hanging out behind me this whole time, so give me just a minute while I bring him out. You might notice that he's in a cooler, and it's not because I'm trying to keep him cold, actually because I'm trying to keep him really nice and warm. So instead of having ice in this cooler, I have a hot water bottle. It's full of hot water so that he can stay nice and warm while he's in his cooler. Right. This is Tiffany, the black rat snake. Now, Tiffany is a really cool snake that you can find in many different types of habitats. He lives in forests. He lives in mountains. He lives sometimes even on farmland. So if you think about the types of habitats that we have here in Michigan, we've got lots of forests. We even have lots of farms here too. So he's got some really great habitats here in Michigan. And snakes sometimes get a bad reputation. I know lots of people that are nervous around snakes, but they're actually very, very helpful in their ecosystem. Snakes are excellent hunters, and they love to hunt for things like mice and rats. And that's especially great for farmers because there's usually lots and lots of rats and mice that live on a farm. So he is a really good hunter, and as you can see, he's been sticking out his tongue pretty much this whole time, and that's so that he can smell his food because he uses his tongue to smell. Now, he also might love to live in a wetland, which is a great place for him to find lots of water. But just like our toad that we met earlier, Chewy, this is an animal that cannot make their own body heat. So if they live in a place that's warm all year round, that's not a problem. But when they live here in Michigan, that can be a pretty tricky thing to deal with. So what they do is they will go underground and go to sleep all winter long. Does anyone remember what that's called? If you said hibernation, you are correct. So this snake hibernates in the winter to be able to survive. All right, I'm going to put Tiffany back in his cooler for now so he can stay nice and warm until he goes back into his zoo habitat up in the zoo. If you'd like, you can say bye, Tiffany. Awesome. All right. Now, before we leave today, what I want to tell you is that there are a ton of different types of animals that live here in Michigan, like our toad and our snake, but there are many others as well. So something that you can do to help animals survive in the wild is that when you go out and when you find these animals, some of them you can look at up close and see. Some of them you might want to use binoculars to look at up close. But what's very important is that you leave them right where you find them. We do have some really awesome animals that you can visit at the zoo and see up close. But when you find one in the wild, it's important to leave it right there. Mr. Ty, do you have any questions before we sign off for today?
Thank you for asking, Ms. Megan. I have one question related to your last comment about leaving animals right where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then I'll find an animal who's crossing a street or a sidewalk, often a turtle, and I like to move them and help them along so they don't get hit by traffic. Does that seem like an okay thing to do if someone does it safely? No.
Yeah, absolutely. So the only time you should really move an animal is if they are in danger of being hit by a car, and that is especially true with turtles. So usually when you see a turtle crossing the road, it's almost always a female looking for a place to go lay her eggs. So you can help her cross the road, and a good tip for helping them is making sure that you bring them the direction that they're already going. Because if you bring them backwards, as soon as you leave, they're going to try to walk across again. So you can help them cross the road. Make sure it's not a snapper before you grab it and pick it up.
Awesome. I have made that mistake before. Well, thank you, Miss Megan. That was a delightful program. And we are going to quickly make one announcement before we close here. I know that we're welcoming you back for one final program this fall. That is Amazing Animal Adaptations, again on a Saturday at 10 a.m. on November 14th. So thank you, everybody. I hope you all tune in for that. And let's all wave goodbye. Goodbye, Miss Megan.
Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful weekend.
You too.